This is WCRN Weekend with your host, Pat Rice.
You are now tuned in to another episode of WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830. And today we have Dr. Patricia Allen, who is a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner and also Executive Director of Medical Services at Summit Behavioral Health. Welcome to the show. How are you today, Dr. Allen?
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
At what age did you begin to gain an interest in mental health and helping others with addiction?
Well, I became a nurse a little bit later in life. I didn't finish nursing school till I was about 30, and I had an interest in it in school, mental health, really seeing a lot of people who were struggling physically, mentally, and emotionally that were underserved, and it kind of piqued my interest. And I was only nursing a few years when I decided to take that route into mental health nursing, and I've stayed in that for the last 30 years, and then primarily moving to addiction work in the last 7 years.
How did you get involved with Summit Behavioral Health?
Well, I knew of the program because it was becoming developed, and it was just coming on as an idea, and then as it began in New Jersey and then in Pennsylvania. And I live in Pennsylvania and became part of the Doylestown team very early on. I've been there almost 5 years.
Do you see a lot of mental and substance disorders out where you're at in Pennsylvania?
Of course, they're everywhere. We see all age groups, all walks of life, economic, it doesn't matter. It's everywhere. And we see a lot of people who have a primary substance abuse problem and a secondary mental health problem, whether it's anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, and eating disorder. There are lots of things that go with substance abuse.
Definitely. I can completely agree with that. What are the statistics for the percentage of people who have mental health disorders and substance abuse disorder in our country? It seems like a lot.
It is a lot, and there's a little bit of variance in what you see in the literature, but it's usually 65 to 75% at the sites that we treat people, and we see it probably very close to that 70, 75%.
That is a lot. That's a pretty big number. And why do we have such a mental health problem and substance abuse problem in America? What causes these issues in our society?
Well, I think, first of all, they've always been there, and I think then the idea that it's more prevalent is certainly true, but it's also been unnoticed, underserved, underacknowledged for a long time. And for many years, those with a mental health disorder would never share that information with anyone. They might just suffer, or they would quietly get treatment. And as time has gone on and the prevalence of substance abuse has really gotten all of our attention, especially in the last 3 years or so, I think we've seen more people willing to speak about it, to talk about it, and much more acknowledgement of this as a disease, as substance abuse as a disease, combined with the disease of mental health disorders. So I think that over time we also have seen a lot of chronic stress in our country. There's also a lot of perfectionism and type A personalities that certainly are more at risk. Genetics play a part as well, also family history. And I really believe that it's kind of this bad intersection in time where your genetics and your environment and your family background and your stress level all come together in a bad way.
I can definitely see that. And within our society, we've already had a couple of epidemics that had to involve with drugs. Like back in the 80s, we had the crack epidemic. And right now, we have an opiate crisis that has taken over the country. How did this opiate crisis get so out of hand?
I think there are probably many reasons why that has occurred. The biggest is I think we have not acknowledged it. And then we've seen all of the pharmaceutical opioids that have been really wildly used and prescribed throughout the country, and that has finally we've gotten more of a hold of that. Heroin has been around. We saw a lot of heroin addiction in the 60s or up into the 70s during the Vietnam War. We saw a lot of that as the guys came back. But I think as time has gone on, the opioid, when people could no longer get a prescription medicine, they could not afford the prescription medicine that their doctor discontinued, they fell into heroin, which was a lot cheaper, and they became off and running with their addiction. But I think many of it starts with a real injury, some kind of a medical problem, an injury or surgery that requires opiate narcotics, and then that goes on to, if the person does not stop, into a dependency. And when you can no longer get the prescription from a physician, they turn to the street. Which
is horrible. And it's sad. A lot of families they have loved ones that go through that. And it causes so many deaths. How many deaths per year are caused by substance and mental health disorders?
Well, it's kind of hard to put them together because I can speak really to substance abuse. There was over 65,000 deaths in this country in 2017, and that number is surely going to rise in this year that we're in now. it's the number of overdoses we're seeing in each state. We see like pockets of the country where it's really, really, really bad. Then when you add mental health to that, you have much higher suicide rate. You have much more risky behavior. People don't take their medication. All that combines together into a national problem.
Mm. Do you think society kind of has a double-edged sword relationship with substances? Like psychiatrists and doctors prescribe it to people that actually need it, and it helps the individuals cope with unwanted symptoms, disorders, so they can live a normal or regular life. But then society, such as movies, in my opinion, pop culture, can glamorize the casual use of abusing drugs and alcohol. We have happy hours, cheap drink prices where people purposely overindulge, and now we have legal marijuana that's coming into effect as well.
I certainly think it is a double-edged sword. I think it takes a lot for someone to come to a psychiatrist and admit they need help, to ask for help. And when they get that help and get the counseling and the medication that they need, and I really think it's important that you always are getting counseling with medication. Medication is one piece of the pie. You really need to have a good counselor and a system for doing that with both counseling and medication. So we have someone who does that and starts to get better, get back into their life and their career and move forward. And we have all those outside influences that are around us. And I certainly do think that the society we live in, we celebrate everything. I can think of for years of the happy hour idea, but also lots of culturally people, drink when they're happy, they drink when they're sad. They celebrate at a funeral. Celebrate at a party or celebrate at a funeral.
Yeah.
There's a use of drugs and I'll say alcohol is a drug as well, that has just kind of perpetuated in time. And as the time goes on, I think it's even gotten worse.
We got to take a quick break, though. We've been talking with Dr. Patricia Allen, a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner over at Summit Behavioral Health in Pennsylvania. You've been listening to WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830.
Welcome to WCRN Weekend and your host, Pat Rice.
We are back, and we've been talking with Dr. Patricia Allen, a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner for Summit Behavioral Health, about the substance disorders and mental disorders that we have in America. Now we are going to talk about how you can tell if someone has a mental or substance disorder issue and how to get that individual help. Now, if someone has a close friend or loved one and they assume that they are doing something or they're on something but are good at hiding it, it can be hard to tell. How can a person tell if someone's abusing drugs, whether it's alcohol to heroin?
I think generally at first it's kind of a suspicion or something just doesn't look right to the family. And I heard someone in an AA meeting speak that says, what would you estimate the time is from the time your loved one walks in the door till you'll know that they've used something? And all kind of, numbers came out, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And the answer was 20 seconds. That if you know someone well, if you're a family member, you're most likely going to pick up those signs before anyone else does. And it's a change in behavior, whether someone who is, who usually is involved in the family is isolated in their room. They're moody. Their mood will go up and down, more irritability. You'll see perhaps, missing work, missing school, stealing, things become missing in the house. They may really not pay much attention to their appearance. Someone who usually is very well dressed and neat and takes care of themselves, subtly you'll see first it changes, that's just going away until you see really just a fraction of the person there. A lot more lying and secretive behaviors, changes in their energy level. There are a lot of these signs that, one thing may not get your attention a lot, but you'll see these start to combine. And as the lies and the dishonesty and the secretiveness goes on, by the time someone, you can't believe anything that anyone's telling you at that point. You know that's when the disease has really, gotten its hold and is moving forward in a bad direction.
And that's when that should raise a huge red flag for loved ones and people around that individual. And it comes to a point where the family might feel desperate, and it's really hard. I know it's really hard to try to convince someone that they need help. But what are some ways that you might be able to sway someone to go into detox or rehab or go to Summit Behavioral Health for help?
I think there's a few things that can contribute. The first thing that's going to happen, though, the person is in denial, and it's very hard for anyone to break that denial. In order for the person to keep using, getting their alcohol or getting their drugs, they've got to lie and do all kinds of things that are against their moral thoughts and values. So when they do that, they're just going to protect that more and more and more so they can keep getting what they have to get to stay even. People aren't getting high at that point when they're addicted. They're just trying to stay even, to try to kind of just go by the day. So at that point, the person's desperate in a lot of ways. The family's not going to be able to get through to that in a very easy way. Oftentimes it takes an interventionist, someone who is not the family, who will come in and make an intervention. Sometimes, I've had where families have brought a kid in for an evaluation, saying it's because the kid's depressed, but really it's a substance abuse problem, and they kind of drug them in here. There are other times where it's a threat from a wife to a husband saying, "You don't go, we're going to leave," or your employer saying, "You don't get treatment, your job is gone." So there's all kinds of ways people get in, and a lot of times it's not because they really want to get there. It's when they get there and engage that they realize they need to be there. So if you can get past that first part to get them in, the rest can start going forward. But it's very difficult for most people. I can count on one hand the times I've seen someone just raise their hand and say, "I need help. I need to get into treatment." It's usually there's something motivating them beside them, other than themselves.
Exactly. Their whole life can and usually is dependent on it if they want to live a successful, a healthy, a longer life and not ruin any more relationships with people that they love. And when someone enters into a detox and rehab, I read that you guys have all different kind of detoxes depending on what substance the person is abusing or what they are going through. How can you tell what treatment is best for the individual?
Well, I guess to start with, for Summit Behavioral Health, and we're in 3 different states, we have an admission call center. So someone's going to call into that call center and start to tell our experts there what the problem appears to be with their family member. So we'll go through a list of questions. Then we will look at what is the most appropriate level of care this looks like. Should they go to the detox immediately? Can they go to partial hospital in one of our outpatient settings? Could they use intensive outpatient programming, or can they actually be an outpatient? And this is all dependent upon what that condition that person is in. If they're highly intoxicated or they're not breathing well, they're going to go to the 911 to an ER, stabilize, and then come to our facility. So we look at all those things, highly looking at the safety of the person as we bring them in. And then as they come in, they'll have an evaluation, a very intensive evaluation, looking at every aspect of their health and their substance use and their family life, getting a good picture of what has been going on with this person. And whenever possible, we're going to collaborate with any outside providers or other treatment facilities the person may have been in, as well as the family.
What is an inpatient and outpatient? What's the difference between the two?
Well, inpatient for us is we have detox, and we have a 40-bed detox in New Jersey, but up in Massachusetts we have a detox that's 22 beds detox and 21 beds kind of a residential where you can we stay longer to kind of get accustomed before you can go back out in the community. But in detox, you're going to be put on a protocol, and after an examination, physical and psychiatric evaluation, that protocol will be determined. So it's going to be different for opiates versus alcohol or benzodiazepines. When you look at alcohol or benzodiazepines, that can be life-threatening detox, and you be very, very carefully monitoring that person. Opiate detox can be, unfortunately, because what we're seeing, especially in the northeast end of the country, we're seeing a lot of fentanyl or carfentanil, can certainly be fatal. But for most parts, when someone is in treatment with an opiate, we're worried about their comfort measures and making sure we can help them look at what kind of medication-assisted treatment they would continue as they go into the next level of care. I truly believe that if someone is going to receive a medication-assisted treatment, they have a much better chance of staying in sobriety and into a program where they can actually have their journey to health continue.
What are some of the withdrawals that someone would have if they're going through an alcohol or opiate detox? I heard it's not pleasant.
Well, opiate detox is usually very uncomfortable for the person. They're going to have nausea and vomiting. They're going to have body aches all over. They'll have many stomach cramping and severe diarrhea. They'll physically feel horrible. Their cravings will be unbelievably, hard for them not to try to leave. They really physically and mentally suffer a lot through those first days of being without the opiate.
I heard that if you quit alcohol, if you're an alcoholic, and you try to quit alcohol cold turkey, that it can kill you, that you can just automatically, your heart just stops.
Well, it's not so much that as it is if the person tries to stop using alcohol on their own, they're most likely going to go into withdrawal. And withdrawal can be serious. It can have severe heart consequence, and they can have delirium tremens, and they can seize, and a seizure could absolutely lead to death if they were not attended to. So if someone is going to withdraw from alcohol, it should be in a safe place. And that usually is a detox, either in a medical hospital or freestanding.
We have been talking with Dr. Patricia Allen of Summit Behavioral Health about how to tell if someone has mental or substance disorders, along with rehab and detox. We're going to get into genetic testing next and much more. Stay tuned. You've been listening to WCRN Weekends with Pat Rice on AM 830.
You're listening to WCRN Weekend. Once again, here's your host, Pat Rice.
And we return. We are going to continue to talk with Dr. Patricia Allen about the process of detoxing, genetic testing, and much more. I know you go around teaching and talking about genetic testing. Could you tell us a little bit about genetic testing? Like, how can genetic testing help with mental and substance disorders from being passed down?
What it's a different kind of genetics, and what we do is we do pharmacogenetic testing, and that's a swab of the cheek. And what it looks at a few things that help us understand what kind of medication would most likely work in your body, and what kind of medication is likely to not work or cause severe side effects. And that is based on the testing that looks at our receptors. It looks at the opiate receptor. It looks at our serotonin receptors. It looks at transporters that are transporting neurotransmitters to the brain. It also looks at how our liver is in the liver. We have enzymes that will process medication that comes in our body. Those enzymes, there's six or eight major ones that we look at, and that tells us if you're a slow metabolizer. If you're a slow metabolizer of any drug, if it's in your body today, there'll be a little bit more still left tomorrow and the next day. So you can develop side effects from that continuing presence of the drug. Likewise, if you're an ultra-fast metabolizer, that drug can go out of your body really quickly, and you're never going to get an effect from it, and you would need higher and higher doses to get the effect that you need, which may be contraindicated for your health.
And deadly.
So this pharmacogenetic testing helps us personalize treatment. It's not a be-all and end-all. It's a tool. It's a very valuable tool that we use to help understand what medications will work.
That is wonderful, and that's groundbreaking. What are some of the next steps after detox, and when someone finally becomes clean, how do they stay clean? Like, for someone who has abused drugs for a decent amount of time, like a decade or more, are they at risk for a mental illness if they already didn't have one? And can their brain body ever recover from all the damage?
Well, that's a number of loaded questions. The detox. First of all, you have to look at substance abuse treatment as on a continuum of care. There's no way that you can just walk in, get treatment, walk out, and everything's going to be okay. So we look at levels of care, and that you can enter those levels. You can enter that care any level. It's wherever it's suited best for you. But we want a continuum that starts with, when you look at detox and inpatient, then you look at residential treatment or sober living. You look at partial hospital, which has a person in treatment 6 to 8 hours a day to kind of like the hospital without the walls, intense treatment. Then intensive outpatient, it's a few hours a day, 3 to 5 days a week. And then outpatient, once a week with individual, once a week with the group, involvement in the community in NA or AA, other support groups, family involvement, and the continuum lasts over time. We have many people who have been in treatment in some part of that continuum for a couple of years and are remaining sober, and that's the beauty of that. You get them engaged, you keep them engaged. We've had people who've come back who had not picked up anything again, but they had bad family experience, had lost their job, and they were afraid. They wanted to come back for kind of like a tune-up, get back in the group and kind of rehone their skills and go on. And that's what we would hope someone would do, is to recognize that you're in that spot. There is no cure for addiction. We help people to get into remission of their disease by treating it, and you have to treat it forever, just like you have to treat diabetes or heart disease. It doesn't go away. You have to continue to monitor it and care for it. And detox, again, is only the beginning, and hopefully the person has the ability then to go to the next level of care and is willing to do so. Not everyone is, but we see the best benefit is when you can go along the continuum.
Absolutely.
It also means if someone is in trouble, if they are, say they relapse used to be considered a really horrible event, and certainly it's not a good one. And it's a process. Relapse is not just happening at one time. Someone's already probably stopped going to meetings, maybe didn't take their medicine. Things are going on. They're not paying attention to the disease, and it's really emerging again. the best thing we can do is have that person say, look, I'm in trouble, and we right away address it and we start moving forward again. We pick up right away and help them move forward and partner with them and to stay in their recovery. So it's that engagement over time that really can make the difference.
Absolutely. And so it seems like addiction is strictly a genetic, it's in your chemistry, it's in your genes. It's not I don't think it's a mental thing from what I'm hearing from you. Like I see people argue, well, don't feel bad for people going through addiction. It's a mental thing. They want to do it. But it seems like it really goes down to their genes and their chemistry, and they can't change that, really.
And it horrifies me when I hear those things, because still in 2018 there's a very big stigma and a lot of judgment, which does not help people access treatment. And the reality is, and it's medically found, that it is a disease. Once you have the disease of addiction, the changes take place in your brain. They are not going to, you can't reverse it. It is what it is. But it's the treatment that goes on. There's probably a 50%, unless we have 50% genetic possibility in there, that if you have two parents and your immediate relatives, that are two people in immediate relatives, especially parents, it's probably about a 50% likelihood you could become addicted. That doesn't mean you're going to. There are plenty of people who do not become addicted who have family members with addiction.
What is the future of mental health and substance abuse in America? And how do you think treatment for clients will keep on improving?
Well, my hope is that it is going to keep on improving. I think what we're seeing now, because of the opioid epidemic, we're having awareness that we've never had before across this country, and the attention of our president to many of our governors who've had state of emergencies, and a willingness to help others access treatment. Access is the biggest problem. You know, you might identify the thousands of people with an active addiction, and only a handful ever get to treatment, and that's very sad that in this country we live in that we're not getting people cannot get access. So I would hope to see that we're going to see more of safe drug programs. I know that in New Hampshire, there's a lot of programs where the fire stations have those safe stations where you can come in and ask for help to get treatment, and they will get you help for treatment. It's anonymous, and you really get help with that. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that, where the more activity we have that grassroots from the community upward that helps people being willing and not being afraid or stigmatized by asking for treatment, which is where we'll see things start to change. We also need to see the changes we have when many of our states are not letting nurse practitioners practice to the full extent of our education and experience, and that is limiting the number of nurse practitioners who can be out there helping those, especially in like the rural areas of Vermont or New Hampshire where you have less access directly. The Suboxone waivers are essential for improving access to that care, and we only have a handful of those across the country in comparison to the hundreds of thousands of people who may need them.
And if people want to get in touch with you or Summit Behavioral Health, what are some ways that they can?
Well, we have a website, summitbehavioralhealth.com, which we have a lot of our information on there. We have our phone numbers, we have the locations. There's specific information about the programs. For instance, we're very big into holistic. If you walk into our site in Haverhill, it definitely does not look like a hospital type site. You walk in, it's just a very welcoming environment. It just feels home-like, and the bedrooms are like real bedrooms with real beds with cozy comforters and a welcome basket. You're invited in. We consider, when you relapse, and some people may 3 or 4 or 5 times, we say, okay, we're glad you're back. Come in. We're going to help. Let's walk this road. So we welcome them into an environment that is welcoming, and our staff is trained that way too, where empathy is very important in terms of how we handpick our staff to make sure that we're treating people with utmost respect and dignity, and that's what helps keep someone in treatment as well. Yeah. And if we have it, like I guess with anyone else, we have a toll-free number that's also available if you'd like me to tell you that.
Absolutely.
It's 855-855-9199.
Hey, once again, Dr. Allen, I would like to thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
And
if you get to Haverhill, please check us out.
That was Dr. Patricia Allen, a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner and executive director of medical services at Summit Behavioral Health out in Pennsylvania. We will catch you guys next weekend, and remember, stay healthy.
This has been WCRN Weekend, and your host, Pat Rice.